I had the misfortune of discovering this website because someone shared a link from it. I thought it was nonsense. I had a little flick through and yeah, I discovered more nonsense. So that's alright. Like I said, I should have called this channel The World of Nonsense, really. But, you know, that probably exists anyway. I hope it does. This is a website called Red Pepper, if you hadn't already guessed. It's extremely socialist. Well, don't know how you done. How I figured that one out. And this article has the genius idea of wages for commuting. Joni Cohen writes that workers should be paid for the time they spend traveling to work. That's correct. You should be paid for the time you spend traveling to work. Now, did you see problems here already? Just think. Because some people, a lot of people, this is why socialism is a bit strange. Because a lot of people don't think too many steps ahead. They think like one step ahead and go, huh. And they go, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's totally right. And then they don't think about the next step, the next step. Like when I was full-blown, advocate for socialism, I didn't really think that much about the whole ins and outs of it. And when I did think about it, I sort of just ignored it and went, oh yeah, oh no, it's all right, it's all right. And then eventually it was like, oh yeah, no. Because you get to the third step, like even the second step of what it all leads to, you're like, oh, well that's not going to work. And then the first step is like, oh no, of course not, no, that's silly. And then you get the fourth step, go, well, it's blatantly bonkers. Why am I still thinking about this? I don't know. People just don't. In-depth thinking is lost in us. I think that in the past we weren't as big a thinkers, perhaps. We were like hand to mouth sort of thinking, but now it's different, where we have so much information and yet we're bombarded. Our concentration is like, we don't really look into the nuances of things. If we had access to the amount of information that we had, but we had more time to digest the important bits of information, and we weren't just so distracted by everything that we see on social media or whatever it is, maybe things would be a bit different, and this could all politely go away. Because people's problem is that there's problems with capitalism. Well, there's no such thing as perfection, my friends. But capitalism has done wonders for society. And everyone goes, oh, colonialism, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Would you know what it's like before capitalism? Like, please, There's people who sort of make out that slavery only existed under capitalism or colonialism or imperialism. It's like, are you mental? Have you not looked at any history? Look at the history of Britain. Like, we were conquered and enslaved time after time after time. Everyone came and had a go at Britain. It's like first, like what? Like, you don't know nothing? Honestly, lack of thought is crazy. But this, look, we'll give it a chance. Have you ever been sat on the train to work at 7 in the morning and been struck by the utter injustice that your 2-hour daily commute? Why are you commuting for 2 hours? For goodness sake, is the job worth it? Although solidly part of your working day is not remunerated in the slightest. Not to mention the fact that you have to pay for the privilege of getting to work in order to be exploited. Good God. Well, where are you working, for starters? Where are you working? To be exploited. Good God, the language. To be exploited. That's your immediate thought about work. I'm being exploited. No, it's called an exchange. Right? You exchange time for money. Right? It's like when you buy stuff. Do you know? It gives value. It's value. How much do you value your time? How much do you value this? How much is this worth to you? All right. How much does this benefit your life? Does it match the cost? The one-off cost? No, don't forget about all that. But what if we got paid for our travel time and expenses? What if our employers had to pay for the privilege of bringing in labour from a distance and this cost wasn't foisted onto the individual worker? Well, that shit does happen. But the fact is that it's your choice of where you go to work. Often it's your choice of where you live. Essentially, Like, you can choose how to do things, right? I am not tied down to nothing. I travel around. I rent somewhere for a little bit, then I move on. I am never weighed down. Okay, I do have the benefit for working online, but at the same time, I don't know. Just like, what do you want? you know, you could just rent somewhere for a little bit and then go, I don't like it here. Go somewhere else. You could. I did. Many long time. In our current state of declining wages and working conditions, it seems pretty absurd to be thinking about forcing our employers to pay us for the time when we aren't even in the workplace. Yes, it is absurd. It is. It even seems to go against the long-standing dictum of the workers' movement, fair wages for fair work, but really this demand is not without precedent. However, for this lesson, we can't simply look back at the halcyon days of social democracy. We have to cast our gaze back to the 15th century, and age that Marx noted to be the golden age of the English labourer in the town and country. Right, so we want to look back to the 15th century to look at how great things were now. Is that right? Forget about what Grandma says about the good old days. About her great-great-great-granddad had it better. The population of Europe had recently been decimated by the Black Death plague, meaning that the working people were suddenly a scarce commodity. The proletariat and the peasantry found themselves in a position of incredible bargaining power and soon began to demand some of the highest wages, benefits, and lowest work hours that workers have ever seen. Well, sounds like overpopulation is problematic. Therefore, this seems to be more of a... So where you're going, you could use this as an argument against mass immigration. You do realise that, right? That's how it looks to me. Doesn't it? Hasn't it got a whiff of that about it? I smell her. I smell her. I smell populism. Look, because you decide to travel 2 hours to work, based on where you think your employer should pay for that time that you're not working, to factor in. It's like, it is about choices, Like, some people choose to live way out of the city. Like, I remember when I used to go to college in Guildford. The first year I spent in Guildford, and I had enough of Guildford. So I went back to London, and I commuted every day. Luckily, I didn't start until like the afternoon or late morning or whatever it was. So it wasn't too bad, Could sit down on the train. But I wasn't doing that for a huge length of time. I knew that wasn't forever. But there's people who decide to go out and, walk out and live in, like, they call it the stockbroker belt and that. And they'll decide to commute into London for hours every day and come back, just to look at their expensive house and kiss their kids when they're asleep. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, well, you chose to do that. Okay. You thought that was worth it. You thought your time... To get so many... I would take... If someone said, yeah... We'll pay for your time when you'll travel. We'll pay for you when you're traveling. It's like, shit, I'd move as far away as possible and then just, mack it up on the train. I'd sleep on the train because then I'd be getting paid for sleeping. I'd be like, great, I'm getting paid for my sleep. I'd work a way out that benefited me way better. Like, it's come on, really? Because then you've got one person who could live down the road, doesn't get paid as much as the person that lives further away. So everyone's just going to move further away, isn't it? Well, what? It's like, well, he gets paid more than me. Yeah, well, he travels for longer than you. Well, that's up to him, isn't it? Do you see all the problems that are happening right now? One of these many radical demands, one was the viaticum, a provision of everything needed for a journey. Originating in ancient Rome, it consisted of a mode of transport, horses or oxen, food supplies and warm clothes, to be given to Roman officials when making journeys on state business. Silvia Federici explains that in the 15th century it came to be a pay packet given to the workers, in addition to the wage, as remuneration for coming and going from home to work at so much per mile of distance. So what is the economic logic behind the viaticum? It's not simply a boost that makes our lives a bit easier, although in itself would be reason for celebration. But more urgently, it penetrates to the heart of the problem of work and remuneration under capitalism. The logic of the Viaticum turns the ideology of work on its head. Work is not a joy and a privilege to which people should strive, kindly provided by employers. Rather, the employers are the ones who ultimately benefit most from the economic systems which obliges most people to haul themselves to the workplace every day. It says, if bosses benefit from workers to travelling to a workplace, why don't they bloody well pay for it? If workers have to spend time and energy, not to mention a substantial proportion of their wages, on getting to and from work, then surely we should be remunerated for that. It just won't work now. Okay, this just won't work. It's just not going to work. How long are you going to go on about this for? This is not the 15th century, you nut job. And what would it look like in the 21st century demand? The 21st century context requires an update of this demand. Now, perhaps more than ever, British workers are commuting long distances to work in parts of cities in which they cannot afford to live. Well, it's their choice to work there, isn't it? Isn't it? The commute to work has become elongated, more expensive, and almost impossible to avoid. The near total decline of agricultural and industrial work in Britain has led to burgeoning sub-urban populations accompanied by a concentration of capital and jobs within urban centres. So perhaps now more than ever we need a radical answer to the problem of the commute. We can't totally rely on public employers to solve this issue. We have to aim for nationalised affordable transport alongside, nationalised transport would be awful. Worse than it is. Do you want it to be worse? Do you know what I mean? You know, I've broken my leg. Would you like it to be worse? We'll chop it off. Workers with disabilities that impair mobility and travel must be remunerated, factoring in differences in price of accessible forms of transport and increased duration of these commutes. They have freedom passes, you nut job. Have you heard of a freedom pass? It's called a freedom pass because you don't bloody pay for your transport. It's a freedom pass. Have you heard of a freedom pass? With a Corbyn government in waiting, the first element of this demand seems to be even closer than the horizon. Yes, let's have nutty policies. If we're really going to value the urgent economic necessity of all that domestic reproductive work that goes into making workers, we can't just talk about compensating for the travelling that goes into paid work. Ultimately, wages for commuting should remunerate the labour time of taking children to school and caring for sick or elderly. Oh my God, you want employers to pay for every aspect of your life, for every choice that you have, for every decision that you have, you want an employer to pay for it. That's not how it works. It's an exchange. You exchange time in the workplace, for money. Okay, it's up to you to work out whether it's worth travelling that far to work. Okay. All right. It's simple. You're going to this wacky loony land, all of which is largely done by women, caring for the sick or elderly. We should be paid for taking our children to school. What happened to just wanting the best for your children and doing whatever it takes? But we should be paid for everything. People who don't like monetary gains and don't like capitalism, as in money, lots of money. People who think it's obscene to be having lots of money, they really want to dish out a lot of money for a lot of things. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, let's dish out money for everything. Everything's about money now. It's like I thought you wanted something that was opposed to money, that just didn't put so much emphasis on money, make it better. I don't know, no, money for everything. Just bloody chuck money at everything. We want to pay for everything. We have a lot to learn from the workers of the 15th century and their willingness to demand exactly what they wanted for a better life. Yeah, well, supply and demand, bitch. Overpopulation. This is how it is. What do you want to do? It's a call for a curb on immigration, is what you seem to be implying. Or genocide. I'm not quite sure which one. It may seem far off in a work culture where you are more likely to spend your commute willingly doing the unpaid labour of responding to work emails than you are to demand payments for simply sitting on a train and listening to a podcast. But if we don't have the courage to value our time and demand our bosses to value it too, then we will find it very difficult to achieve anything like the life that the proletariat deserves. Well, you totally fucked up, because someone will come along and do that work and not have those demands. That's poor ass immigrants That's why they're admirable people, because they'll come and, you know, the old saying is like, well, they'll come and do the jobs that the British aren't willing to do. Or whatever, whichever country you are. Because they will. They'll knuckle down, they'll go, well, that's nothing. I'll live like, you know, head to foot, you know, 30 of us in one room, you know, I'll eat noodles all day, and I'll work for less money than this prick. And I won't make these silly demands because I'm looking for a better life, and this is better than what I got. You get replaced with your silly demands. Like, come on, you haven't thought this through. You're looking now. Not only we're looking back to the times of Karl Marx, now we want to look back to the 15th century. Apparently, that's how we had it the best, because everyone died from the Black Death. Oh, good Lord, this is proper.